All right. Good afternoon, everybody. It is great to be back. Welcome to the month of August, and welcome to Solving the People Puzzle, the podcast presented and brought to you by Wamley, where I, your host, Francois, interview incredible guests from the HR industry and just share value with our community. So in my guest today is Bohlale from WeBuyCars. But Bohlale, before I jump into the conversation, I would firstly like to welcome you to our podcast. It's incredible to have you on the show. And for the audience out there, would you mind just start by just giving a bit of an overview of yourself, your career, what you're passionate about, and where you're at now?
Perfect. Thank you, Francois. Thank you so much for the invite. It's such an honor to be able to be on your platform and to be able to speak to you today. As you've said, my name is Bohlale Paile. I'm currently the head of HR at WeBuyCars. But really my background for the past 12, 13 years has been in the HR space, predominantly in talent acquisition and talent development. So I've worked for some fantastic organizations that have given me the opportunity and the platform to really grow in something I'm super, super passionate about. I love young professionals particularly because I just think that they're the future of the organization and they're the future of the country as a whole as well. So a lot of my HR experience has been heavily weighted into graduate programs, graduate development, learnerships, internships, all of those kinds of things. And it's been such an amazing opportunity for me to have landed in something I love quite early in my career, because that's really helped kind of facilitate and develop in me the type of kind of strengths and characteristics that allow me to really kind of shine in this space as well. So it's been such a phenomenal 12 years of my career. A career in corporate is never kind of just, all the way up. There's lots of bumps along the way. You learn a lot about yourself. You bump your head against other people along the way as well. But it's all part of the learning and all part of the development. And I think one thing that I've really tried to do is ensure that all those kind of elements that I've learned along the way, I'm sharing it back into the community, back into young professionals, so that it helps them at least have a better start in their careers from the time that they kind of start. So that's kind of me in a nutshell in terms of my career and what I really love doing.
Wow, incredible. What a story. I think very few people, professionals, can say, I landed in my passion early.
Yes.
And that's what I heard you saying. And that circles beautifully back to the topic of today's conversation, which is about young professionals, your passion. I myself am quite passionate about that as well. I have the privilege of lecturing and speaking to young students every now and again. And when they ask me about my profession, I say it was an accidental profession.
Yeah.
I never planned becoming an industrial psychologist.
Right.
I didn't even know what that is in matric.
Yes.
So it's wonderful to speak to someone that landed in their passion as early as you did. So, Bohlale, let's jump into this, because I think it's such a relevant conversation. We have obviously the current landscape of unemployment, of an issue around unemployability. We have the Great Resignation. We have COVID. What, in your opinion, is the current state of the young professional landscape, particularly in our context?
I mean, I think that's a fantastic question for us to be starting off on. I think so much has happened in the economy, in the world, in just the past 2 to 3 years. And I think I've seen how that has somewhat impacted the youth and employment within that space as well. I mean, you've said it correctly. Our unemployment rate is still very high in South Africa, particularly. And we still see a lot of people kind of going through university and still landing out and not having a job, right? And I think those kind of trends are still somewhat continuing. But something that's been quite interesting for me that I've picked up in the last kind of while is a lot of graduates that I've interviewed recently. There's a lot of them that have started side hustles, right? And I think this is a term that we kind of hear quite a lot, kind of said here and there and on radio, and it's become quite a term that everyone understands and knows what we're speaking about. But recently, in the past kind of month, I had an opportunity to interview quite a few graduates that were still studying. But it is amazing to see the type of entrepreneurial thinkers that we have in the country. And I think so many of them have started proper, legit businesses that's either making them money, that's being funded by bigger organizations. And it's just fantastic to see how the youth have really embraced this COVID period where a lot of us were kind of forced to think differently around our careers, differently around, is this the type of career I want to be in? Am I going the right track? Am I not? A lot of people losing their jobs during COVID as well. And it's forced people to be creative around how else can I make money? If I'm in the type of career that, depending on what's happening in the economy, I could either lose my job today and not have it tomorrow. What else could I be doing? And I think there's been such a huge shift in terms of young people that are still studying, trying to find different ways of keeping themselves busy, of starting organizations that are close to them and that they are passionate about. And I think we're going to see almost the offspring of this in a couple, 5-6 years. Bigger companies that are then starting out might have started at university during the COVID period. Someone's thinking, what else should I be doing with my time? So that's been fantastic. And I think that's been something that's come out quite a bit. A lot of graduates as well are studying further, which is interesting. So it's almost, I remember back in my day when I was studying, it was almost like an undergrad is okay, but if you've got an honors, that's like fantastic, right?
Yes.
I'm hearing a lot more young professionals kind of like a master's is kind of a prerequisite for me, and I'm wanting to do a PhD as well. And that mind shift has also been quite interesting to see in young professionals in this day and age. A lot of them going to overseas opportunities, wanting to study their masters abroad, wanting to study their PhD whilst they're working. So there is also this drive of just further educating yourself and ensuring that you don't just have the basic, because it almost seems like the basic of just having an undergrad doesn't cut it anymore. And so there is
not good enough anymore.
Exactly. There is this thinking of, I need to do more. And a lot of overseas opportunities have also been born out of this COVID period. I think I've seen a lot of young professionals that are already kind of working 2 to 3 years working. There's a lot of opportunities internationally, particularly in the professional services field. And people have been migrating to go and work overseas, which has been fantastic as well.
I think one would be silly not to connect the dots. And so if you consider the landscape, if you consider what has happened, if you consider the skills shortage, it's interesting to start pulling together what you're saying around, okay, I'm either going to really differentiate myself through education and do the master's and the PhD and the internship program or work abroad, or I'm going to start the side hustle and start generating income. And that's fantastic to see. But what do you reckon are the biggest challenges for the individuals who don't, for whatever reason, whether this be resources or cognitive capacity, aren't able to get into an honors, master's, PhD program? And then together with that, also the guys who don't have that entrepreneurial, intuition to start the side hustle. It feels like there's this group then left in the middle. And I heard the president speak the other day saying that I think it's like 1 million young individuals not entering the workforce on an annual basis. I hope I quoted that correctly. Audience, if I got that wrong, it's a big number. So what are their issues and where are they struggling?
So I think there's two main categories here that I see kind of emerging, and I think some of the biggest challenges that the youth face, particularly graduates that are coming out of university, is that you either have been a bright spark at university enough to qualify to go into a graduate recruitment program at a particular organization, because the companies that do have graduate programs, they're the guys that are wanting the best, the brightest candidates across different disciplines. And that's kind of what they're gunning for. And what you'll find is that a massive organization may only take 50 in a year, may only take 100 in a year. And if you think of the thousands of graduates that are coming out of very different institutions across the country, all wanting the same positions, all wanting to be employed within their respective disciplines, the one challenge that you'll find is that if you have not been someone that's focused on your academics whilst you were at university, to be part of kind of the cream of the crop is what you'll hear, organizations saying. Getting into graduate programs is increasingly difficult, right? The competition is stiff. More and more candidates are actually doing better academically. And so that just kind of narrows down, the group of people that are immediately taken into the types of programs that can help them, especially given that they have no experience. Now, the next category is that if you have not been someone that's performed academically, and you've kind of done enough to pass, you've done enough to get your C average, which for all intents and purposes is good, right? What you'll find is that a lot of organizations in the junior entry roles are looking for people that are skilled or have some level of experience, right? So it's very difficult if organizations don't have graduate programs and they've got junior roles, they're still looking for people that they're not going to put through a training program. We want you to come in and kind of hit the ground running, right? And that's always some of the complaints that you hear from young people saying, Bohlale, I'm here, I've got a qualification, I want to work, but you're saying you need 1 or 2 years worth experience. How am I going to get
I just got out of varsity.
Exactly. How am I going to get that experience if you guys don't even give us an opportunity to be trained, right?
Exactly.
And so you almost have this massive gap, like what you're saying, of candidates that don't have the experience, they can't get in. If they haven't, performed well enough academically, they're not making the cut into the top kind of graduate programs where we actually take people without experience and we train you. And so there's a massive gap just from a private sector perspective in terms of what are we doing to kind of fill that gap in terms of the guys that are coming in graduate programs, they're typically coming into leadership type programs where we're training them up to be future leaders. But no one's thinking about the guys that are coming in and need that 1 or 2 years work experience to kind of kickstart their career. So those are the biggest challenges that I find, Francois, and it's frustrating for young people, and it's frustrating for us as well from a corporate perspective.
Yeah, and I can imagine, I remember back then applying for jobs 10, 12 years ago where the minimum requirements just was always so difficult to attain because you're looking for something that has been relatively impossible or very difficult for me to get. And so there's a bit of confusion in that space around, okay, well, what do you then need? And how do I get in? So I think, this is a brilliant platform for us to take the conversation then from both angles. So let's start on the candidate side, and then we'll circle to the corporate and the organization side. What are the individuals, the candidates, then not doing well? Or what could they, listening, and now this is to the audience, guys. If you're a young individual out there, if you're a corporate, we'll get to you in a second, but to the young professionals out there sitting here listening to this, how can we help you? How can we help them? What can they do better or focus on?
Francois, for me, the one and biggest thing that I always punt when I speak to young candidates is curiosity is number one for me, right? And what I mean by curiosity is as you enter university and as you enter kind of the pre-employment phase of your life, that is for me the most critical time in how your career is going to start, right? And for me, curiosity means as you get into a particular discipline, ask yourself, where am I planning to go with this? What do I want to do? Where do I want to be working? Where can I get into graduate programs that allow me to use my skill set? Which organizations are looking for people that are studying what I'm studying? What does it take to get into those organizations, right? We're just not asking enough questions. We're not curious about our careers. We just kind of landing in university, maybe because your father or your mom kind of pushed you in that direction and said you have to get a qualification and you're kind of doing it to appease them. But at the end of the day, the way that you kind of tackle your university years is actually what's going to help you build the right platform for you to get into the type of career. So I always say, people that are studying, be curious, ask yourself in 3 years' time, where do I want to be? How do I get there? Because by doing that, what it allows you to do is that you start then intentionally making the right type of steps that allow you to get into the roles that you want to be getting into, whether it's academically, extracurricular, whatever the case may be. You start asking the right questions. There's a lot of candidates that get to their final year and you ask them, where have you been? What have you been applying to? Oh, no, I was waiting to finish so that I could apply to things. And I'm like, you know how many graduates in their second year, in their third year are going into internships, are going into VAC programs, are discovering what are organizations offering and what do they need from me? And because of that exposure, they're able to almost get themselves ready so that at the end of the time that they kind of finish off their qualification, they're ready to get into an organization, just like that, right?
That is gold. I'm hearing you speak about a proactive, intentional mindset. Definitely. And you know, with that comes this forward thinking, setting myself up. And you know, it's interesting. I mean, a lot of us went to tertiary education, and it's a fun environment. You might be out of your parents' home for the first time ever with some freedom to move. And it's the balance around, you know, being a 20-year-old and enjoying life, but also understanding that when I get, because if I circle back, I'll never forget my dad once explained to me, you know, he's in his 60s. He explained to me that back then, if you wanted to do something, you could just do it, right? Pending, you know, the right qualification or ability or whatever. But nowadays, with the current landscape, you're not just going to end your fourth or your third year and have 10 options to pick from. You need to be that proactive person that is setting yourself up and navigating your career from the start around where do I want to end up? What do I like to do? Where do I want to go? And then we circle back to your point around curiosity. To go and find out.
Go and find out.
Love
go
it.
and investigate. And the other thing you don't realize is that, you know, when you get to your second year, your third year, and you're going into internships and you're going to VAC programs, what you don't realize is that you're already putting yourself in front of an employer. You're not waiting for them to assess you based on a CV, a piece of paper. They already know who you are because they've interacted with you. So the likelihood of you being picked once you're done with your academics is so much higher. You're almost setting yourself up to being in the first line of people being
front of
any
mind,
organization, and
top
front
of
of mind.
100%.
Absolutely.
Love that.
And you know, the one thing is that, you know, graduates will always say, but Bohlale, you know, why do we have to be so strict during university? It's a time to be fun. We're out of home and we want to enjoy ourselves. And I always say, enjoy yourselves, but to a limit. Understand that if it takes me a lot longer than someone to get the type of marks I need to be getting, then you need to regulate yourself. But if you can get away with kind of going out and having fun and still getting the right kind of marks, then do that. But measure yourself and know what it is you're aiming to get to. Because if you don't know what you're aiming for, then you're just not going to aim for anything in essence.
And I guess in a sense, Bohlale, this places quite a big responsibility and a sense of ownership on quite a young individual. And that's due to the scarcity of opportunity and the fact that you say, I need to be the cream of the crop. So I love the fact that this can then, because the Whamley podcast is all around practical tools and tips. And so I'm hoping audience and young professionals listening out there that you heard Bohlale talking about the curiosity and the being proactive. Let's circle into some of the other skills that can be taught on a varsity, or let's call it a younger level, that can help them prepare. So we've spoken about curiosity, we've spoken about an entrepreneurial spirit. What would some of the competencies or behaviors or attributes be that could help set them up for this?
So for me, there's 5 core attributes, and I know there's a lot of attributes we could be speaking about, but for me, I think there are 5 core ones that are important for you to help prepare you for the world of work, right? Because the one thing is that, young professionals don't realize there's a massive adjustment between being taught and being at university and then coming into the world of work. So for me, the first one is obviously communication skills, right? So being someone that can communicate verbally, that can communicate in a written format as well, is absolutely important. In any environment, you're going to need to present yourself. You're going to need to speak of yourself. You're going to need to speak in front of people. You're going to need to articulate where you are on a project well enough so that your peers and the people you work with know exactly what you are saying, what you mean by it. So the way in which you communicate is absolutely important and fundamental. And secondly, for me, teamwork, right? So being someone that can work with others. I understand there's lots of people with very different personalities. Other people like to isolate themselves and be on their own and in their own space. But unfortunately, when you get into the world of work, you don't have the luxury to say, I don't want to work in a team. Can I be in my own little office? Do you know what I mean?
Especially in the beginning.
Exactly.
Yes.
Especially in the beginning.
It's okay for you and I to have our own office now, 10, 12 years later. But in the beginning...
In the beginning, it's absolutely crucial because more likely than not, you are the one person that's almost helping set up and organize a lot of the administrative stuff, which means that you're speaking to so many different people. You need to learn to be quite flexible around how you approach this one. It's not the same way you approach that one. That's where communication comes in as well. But these are types of skills that you can learn at university. And I'll circle back to this a bit later, around how you spend your time at university, making sure that you develop these. We've spoken about taking initiative and being proactive, absolutely fundamental. Because for me, the last thing you want when you have someone junior in your team is for you to always be the one, as the manager, saying, have you done this? Have you done that? And them just kind of doing it to that point and not thinking beyond that, right? So being someone who's naturally curious about, what am I doing? Where does it fit in? What else should I be thinking about over and above this? Those are the types of skills that you should be starting to develop already that are really going to set you up. And the next skill for me is being a doer, right? And not
taking action.
Yes. Be someone that's willing to roll up your sleeves. Be someone that's willing to have a high work ethic. Because I think what you find a lot of times is candidates, as I've said, they're going to go into doing their master's, their PhD. Once they have those kinds of qualifications, they kind of feel like, do you know how qualified I am? Should I really be doing the admin? Should I really be doing the data capturing? Should I really be doing spreadsheets? And the one thing they don't realize is that theoretically the work that you're supposed to be doing, but from a practical perspective, you don't know anything. You need to learn from the bottom. So being someone who's willing to roll up their sleeves and do almost anything, get your hands dirty, get exposed to everything. And what I've seen is that the guys that are then being proactive whilst doing the very kind of administrative tasks are the ones that very quickly move away from doing admin, because people then can realize and can notice that this person has a lot more to offer. Let me give them something more substantive. Let me give them something more meaty, right? And so how you approach the work that you do will ultimately kind of determine how quickly you move out of the administrative stuff. But if you're dragging your feet and you complain about the fact that you have to do admin and you're not happy to do admin, who wants to give you more than that? Because then it means the other thing I give you, you're going to have the same attitude towards it. It's never good enough. It's never this. It's never that. And no one wants to work with someone like that. And lastly, for me, your attitude. Coming to work with a positive attitude is absolutely fundamental. I've heard a lot of people throughout my profession and throughout different organizations say, Bohlale, give me a can-do attitude any day over and above someone who is an A student in whatever discipline that they've studied. Because more than anything, Francois, I think you can attest to it as well, just having worked with people. The last person you want to work with is someone that is going to complain about something, or someone that's going to come up with excuses why they haven't done
always something. Whining, negative, pessimistic.
Exactly. So the attitude you bring to work almost guarantees, if you've got a positive attitude, it guarantees that people want to work with you. And what does that mean? Once people want to work with you, the more exposure you're getting over and above your peers. The more exposure you get, the more substantive work you start getting, because you know people in higher places, you've been in important meetings, you've met clients, and the ripple effect of that is not something you know when you start your career. But when you look retrospectively, you actually see how all of those things, those building blocks have kind of fitted together. So those for me are absolutely fundamental.
Let me try and repeat. Communication, teamwork,
yes,
curiosity,
yes,
can-do attitude.
yes.
Well, a can-do or a want-to initiative, and
yes.
my attitude.
Yes.
Yes. Yes, yes. You know, as I'm listening to those phenomenal points, I'm again hearing two things. If you're a young professional, that's what you should be focusing on. Is it, Bohlale, fair for me to then flip that around and say that's what the corporates are looking for? You who've spent many, many years recruiting for this, because you can't go on work experience, they don't have it.
Exactly.
So you're looking from a corporate perspective, yes, the right qualification, especially if it's in a specific area, but ultimately you're looking for those 5 qualities when hiring.
Most certainly. When hiring already, when you sit in an interview with a graduate, you're looking for someone that can present themselves well and articulate themselves well. You're looking for someone that when you ask them questions around work that they've done, assignments they've done in groups, what was challenging for them. When you're looking for people that when you ask them about what else have you done outside of your academics, people that show a level of curiosity, wanting to build themselves, personal development, someone that loves to read, someone that loves to gain knowledge, someone that's, captain of whatever team they play in. All of those things say something about your character, right? They say something about your willingness to juggle lots of different balls and still be at the top of your game, and leadership ability. So all the things I've mentioned are what's going to help a graduate and a young professional thrive in a corporate setting, but it's equally what we are looking for in a corporate setting. So it almost goes hand in hand in terms of these are the skills we need, these are the skills we are looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now let's land the plane. For our corporate clients listening to this who do have or maybe don't have graduate programs or opportunities for young professionals, what can the corporates do from their side?
And that's a fantastic question, because I think as much as we are always willing to give information around what graduates need to do, I think as corporates, there's a lot that we could be asking ourselves in terms of what should we be doing to facilitate that. And I think the first thing that I had thought about is really around getting information out there, right? It doesn't help if you've got graduate opportunities and no one knows about them. It doesn't
100%.
help if you have, entry-level roles and it's not advertised, it's not on social media, you're not getting out there onto the various campuses when they have their career fairs. Students just don't know about you. And so you almost think that someone is on PNet or happens to be on your website trying to look for a role.
Or in the local paper.
Exactly. And so if you're not putting yourself out there as an organization, particularly in social media, because a lot of the young professionals are there, a lot of the graduates are there and spend a lot of their time there. If you don't have a strategy around how you're getting word out in terms of the opportunities you have, we're not helping the youth and we're not helping the young guys kind of know what is available for them out there.
Yes.
Equally, I think it's important for us, to put out, as we put out information, it goes back to my number one and most fundamental characteristic that a graduate or young professional must have is curiosity. There's no point when there's so much information for you on YouTube around how to prepare for interviews, how to set yourself up in the working world, and you're not going to know if you're not looking.
Don't jump into that.
You're not going to know if you're not looking for it. And then, secondly, I think what I touched on a little bit earlier, corporates can do a lot around creating platforms, more opportunities for graduates, right? I think only a few of them have graduate programs, and there's a lot of organizations that could actually do with young talent coming into the organization. Even if you start them off on a fixed term contract, it's not a permanent employment, and you have the opportunity to almost build a talent pipeline for yourself as an organization.
Sure.
And you
Sure.
have an
That's power.
opportunity to then pick the best performing graduates to keep them in your organization if that's what
Brilliant.
you like to do. But if you're not creating a platform to get 5 people, 10 new graduates every year coming into the organization and giving them exposure, then you're losing out on an opportunity to also find talent for yourself within the organization.
Yeah.
There are bright candidates out there, Francois. I mean, the kids I meet in this day and age are just phenomenal. And
Sure.
so we miss that opportunity. And I think a lot of times corporates are lazy to train. The training aspect becomes something that's just too much for them. Oh, now I must spend my time training the people and I don't have time to train. I have my own job to do. And you kind of like, if we don't train them, we're not going to leverage off of the skill set that they can bring to the organization. So it's a mindset shift and an intentionality from a corporate perspective to get information out there, to create opportunities, whether it be internships, fixed-term contracts for young guys that have absolutely no experience, but also just the willingness to train people, because you never know. Those people could be, movers and shakers in the organization in time, just because you took the time to do that.
And what I love about that second point is I meet so many organizations who tell us that, where do I find talent?
Yeah.
And it's almost this, I don't want to use the word excuse because it is a reality. Yeah. Talent is scarce, but this is a beautiful platform at a very low risk. I mean, the only real responsibility or risk is time. But to get a platform like a graduate or a young professional in training program, nurture them, build your own external talent pool to pick from, and then train internally into these skills that you struggle to recruit for, that agencies are struggling to find, that seemingly aren't out there.
100%.
Build it.
100%.
Build it.
100%. And if you look at just basic stats around getting people that have experience coming into the organization, as opposed to starting with people that have absolutely no experience coming into the organization. Building your own talent, having that kind of strategy actually saves you in the long run, because sometimes you bring people in externally, you're paying agency fees, you're paying them a high salary because they come with experience as well. And you never guarantee that they're going to stay there long enough for you to see your return on investment, right? They may come in and not be a culture fit and decide, this is not for me, I'm out. You've spent the money, you've spent the time integrating them and all of those things, and you're just not guaranteed. Whereas the beauty of building your own talent, when you have graduates that don't have exposure to corporate, right? You almost get to build them according to the culture of the organization they've come into. They have no basis of comparison. They're not going to be like, oh, this organization's better than this one. This one doesn't have great perks. This one. Graduates it's been such a fulfilling career for me to work with graduates, because they come in and they're hungry. They want to learn. They want the opportunity. They want to grow, and they'll forever remember their first employer, always, because it almost shapes their perception around their career, around themselves as well. And so the likelihood of being able to retain graduates in the organization that become absolutely fantastic in future is much higher when you're starting them out with you, as opposed to getting people externally. So I just think, we need to kind of reflect on what is the cost that we are paying for just getting experienced people in, and how could we kind of reverse that and just invest a bit more into the training aspect to grow our own talent internally. And those people become part of the culture. They understand it because that's their first kind of impression as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think my call to action to the corporates is start now. The longer you wait, the more difficult it becomes. Start now and create those platforms.
Definitely.
Bohlale, this has been an absolute privilege. I know that the audience is going to get so much value from this. I can hear your passion for these young individuals, your wisdom of the last 10 years, working with them, dealing with them, interacting, engaging with them. What would you like to leave the audience with?
Oh, man, I think believe in young people. They feed off your energy. If you bring in young people and you believe in them and you show them that you've got the potential and you believe you can do it, I promise you, you just don't know what you're going to unearth out of them. And for young guys, believe in yourself, believe in your capabilities. It doesn't matter if you've been sitting at home for a year or two unemployed. Don't feel discouraged, don't feel like that's it for me. When I think back of how I started my career, it wasn't the way I would have loved for it to start, but I made the most of any small opportunity that I got, and this is where I am now. So believe in yourself, but also corporates, believe in young people. I mean, they've got a lot to offer, and don't be afraid to allow them to just explore more of themselves within the corporate environment. A lot of older people are kind of like, they're going to take over my position. And it's like, the organization needs to thrive eventually, So believe in young people. They've got a lot to offer. We just need to give them the opportunity and the platform.
Come on. Believe in young people and believe in yourself. Bohlale, it's been an absolute privilege. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, helping us solve the people puzzle. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Much, much appreciated.